So simply transfer it over to the newly filed VAWA petition, and our client continued to have his benefits while he waited for them to make a decision on his VAWA petition. Well, our client is now, fast forward 2 years in, our client became a green card holder. And so he has been a green card holder, and here's the extra plus. In 3 years after getting the green card, he can apply for U.S. citizenship because the spouse who mistreated him was a U.S. citizen. So this is an example of how you can take control of your process, move forward, and this entire process was completely confidential. So even though we made the switch, his, during the separation, during the process of separating from the spouse, she had no idea that this was in place because it is a part of the law that it not be communicated to the abusive spouse or the spouse that's mistreating you, the immigrant spouse. So guys, make sure I'm telling you this because a lot of people think, oh my gosh, the spouse isn't gonna help me. I have no hope. There is still hope. There's more than hope. There's action that you can take. And we've done that for our clients, and it has been good. And that's because the clients took the action they needed to get the help. So you can give up the office a call. If you can relate to this, give the office a call and schedule time for us to talk through your situation, come up with case strategy, and then hit the ground running, get started right away. This is what we do, and we're good at it. And we're more than happy to put you in a position of empowerment in your process. All right, so that's what I have to talk to you about now, switching from VAWA to another type of process. Now I'm seeing questions coming in, so I'm going to answer these questions. And already we have 825 likes on TikTok. Thank you so much. One, it's going to take a number of years. It can take over 7 years. I turned 18 in 2014, and at 18 I got DACA. If I were to self-departure, will I get a 10-year ban? Yes. Yeah. So once you leave the country without a travel document or advance parole, yes. Have you seen any F2A approvals recently from the USCIS? So the F2A category is now, I'm pretty sure there are approvals going through. If you want to figure out what the processing time is that you could expect, you can go look at the I-130 petition, or you can look at the I-485 processing times on USCIS. After prima facie approval, how long ID and EAD takes? If all applied at the same time, go to uscis.gov, go look up the form name, so the EAD form name, you'll see the processing time to expect there. How long does it take for, okay, so I answered that. To renew your work permit, the work permit. When you married a USA citizen, when you can apply for a green card, you can apply right away. So there's nothing that says you can't apply right away. But here's what I always say. When the question comes, I got married to a US citizen, when can we apply? It really is about what kind of evidence do you have to show your bona fide marriage. I've heard so many times people will say, I am ready to apply. I have my marriage certificate and I have some pictures. And here's what's happening. When you submit your marriage certificate and your pictures alone, you're actually creating a red flag for yourself. So you're actually red flagging your application to be investigated further, right? And to be scrutinized. And that's because that's not enough evidence. So keep in mind, the marriage certificate shows you're legally married. But nowadays, any two people can go and get a marriage certificate, go and get married. Any two people can do that. What they want to see is that this marriage is meaningful, that you actually are meaning to build a life together. And to do that, you have to show more than just a marriage certificate. You have to show joint financial obligations. You show that you reside together or that you plan to reside together, joint property, intentions to look out for the other spouse, so estate planning documents, emergency contact records for your employment or medical centers. If you even do things like you have joint membership at certain clubs or in the gym, that is also helpful. Then you can stack on top of that, you can stack pictures, together at different events, times, locations with different people, close friends and family. And just make sure because one piece of feedback we're getting is the photos need to be described. So you have to describe context. So on the back of the photos or on the side of the photos, make sure you're describing who is in the photo, what's going on in the photo, date, time, place, because that can give the officer context. But pictures is just the icing on the cake. It's not gonna give you an approval. So I say this, I list all of this evidence and I emphasize the evidence because that goes to say, do you have all of this? Do you have all of this to show that you can, to show a bona fide marriage? If you do, then you can apply the day after you got married, right? I always use the example of my clients. They were engaged. They sought guidance on how to approach this. Once and we prepared everything. Once they got married, we just got the marriage certificate and the next day we filed it. Why was it so easy? Because they had a history, they had 2 years of living together with joint lease, joint bank account. They had significant savings in their bank account as a couple. They had various pictures showing friends and family. They had a big wedding and they had all this family at the wedding. Obviously, everybody was there, happy for them. And in that case, it was really easy to then file shortly after they actually made it official and got married. So yes, you can apply right away, but you need to make sure you're submitting solid, strong evidence. Hi there, Beverly on YouTube. Hi there, Jude. Nice to see it taking so long. Yes, I know it's frustrating and it can be for a number of reasons. But if you're within the processing time, unfortunately, it's quite a wait. But what I guess to figure out why it's taking so long, you need to talk to your attorney. To figure that out. It could be a number of reasons. So you need to just look at the details there with your attorney. All right, I'm on Instagram now. Can he be brought into the country? So this is where you definitely need to talk to us because we need to understand what the circumstances were. Sometimes you may think it was for no reason, and then we are able to identify the specific reasons. So sometimes when one is trying to enter the country, they're turned around at the airport and they're basically through expedited removal, then there's usually a 5-year bar. If they find fraud or misrepresentation, that can be a lifetime bar. If they are trying to enter the US and they don't have the right documentation, that can also lead to them being turned around and possibly facing expedited removal, so the 5-year ban. Did they have a criminal record? I mean, I know you said for no just reason, but this is just an example of what we need to explore, the specific facts to determine what happened. And it's possible to bring your spouse back through a waiver. But we need to understand, is whatever he was banned for, is it waivable? If it's waivable, then we can move forward with a waiver. Now, it's usually a long process, because what happens is the spouse still has to go through the entire process, go to the interview, and then at the interview, the officer will tell them that they have to apply for a waiver. And then they're given the option to hand in a waiver. So, are you available by WhatsApp? Not at this time. You'd have to give the office a call. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the ticker going across. It has the phone number. Go ahead and call that phone number. If my spouse gets food stamped benefit from the government, would pose any concern if she has to file for me? Great question. Now, they did change the public charge rule in March. And when they did that, it gave officers broad discretion to decide whether, based on certain circumstances in the immigrant's background, whether they will face an increased risk of being a public charge. Now, this scrutiny, so they're usually looking at things like age, education, household size, whether there's any debt, employment history. They're going to look at factors like that. Of course, history of taking public benefits as well, current income. Now, they look at the immigrants, these circumstances of the immigrant's life, not usually the U.S. citizen who's petitioning. However, if the spouse has a history of food stamps and somehow that comes out, because they don't ask these questions on the application about the U.S. citizen spouse, they're asking it about the immigrant. But if somehow it does come to light to the officer that the spouse is dependent on food stamps, they may scrutinize the affidavit of support more closely to ensure that everything matches up for the U.S. citizen spouse to their immigrant spouse. So it does, the change in the public charge rule does give the officer broad discretion to query different facts and circumstances. And so I can see where that may raise questions. U.S. military eligibility. So I don't want to make any assumptions here. However, I do believe that the military requires you to have legal status. So what you should do is possibly, and this is where I don't want to suggest you do anything because I'm not your attorney. So this is where, if you really want to figure out how to approach this, is to call. If you can call a number, a hotline, and ask them what is the criteria, what's the criteria to register for the military, and if you're not one of those, then you can't register, right? So it's just basically to find out what are the eligibility criteria for the military and look to see if you fit within one of those. But being out of status definitely is problematic, maybe problematic, but I don't want to say for sure, because I'm not a military attorney, I am an immigration attorney. So that's where you need to contact them or look closely at the eligibility criteria, and just make sure before you take any action that you personally talk with an attorney so that you understand your rights, you don't take any unnecessary risks. Because keep in mind, guys, that they are checking people's statuses on military bases, right? They have detained